Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nurul Oktasifa. My student number is 222 32 000 12. So I will present my presentation about seminar on English language teaching course. So the table of content of my seminar is the first is abstract, second introduction, third formulation research problem, fourth frame of thinking, five research methodology, five findings and discussion, and the last is conclusion. Okay. So the theme of my seminar is a case study of teaching role in improving motivation in junior high school. Okay. The first is abstract. So this essay main goal is to review the body of writing on motivation in second language acquisition. It seeks to go over the basic ideas of motivation about how teachers can affect students' motivation and how to motivate themselves while teaching. The study contends that teachers have a major responsibility to spark students' interest and maintain it throughout the learning process based on the extensive body of research on motivation. Additionally, it summarized the findings from research on motivation is provide methods and guiding ideas that instructors can apply in their classes. So next is introduction. So based on my theme, a case study of teachers' role in improving students' motivation to learn English at junior high school. So the introduction is education is a crucial aspect of human development and progress, which involves the transfer of knowledge, skills, and values from one generation to another. English language proficiency is a critical skill in today's globalized world. Mastery of English as a second language is essential for students to be able to participate effectively in international communication, trade, and diplomacy. The study aims to investigate the role of teachers in increasing students' motivation to learn English as a second language. Okay, next is the research problem. What is the role of teachers in increasing the motivation of junior high school students to learn English as a second language, and what teaching strategies and techniques do they use to enhance student motivation? Next is frame of thinking. So the first is role of teacher. So continue to strategies in teaching, and the last gain student motivation. Overall, the frame of thinking for the study emphasized the need to understand the complex and dynamic nature of language learning, which is influenced by multiple factors, including the role of teachers, teaching strategies and techniques, and socio-cultural context. So next is research methodology. So the first is research design. The research methodology for this study will be qualitative case study research. This approach is suitable for exploring complex social phenomena, such as the role of teacher in enhancing student motivation to learn English in junior high school. Second is population and samples. The study will be conducted in a junior high school setting with a focus on English language learning. The sample population will include students from the ninth grade and their English language teacher. Three is data collection method. Data collection will involve a variety of qualitative methods, including interviews and questionnaires. And fourth is data analysis method. Data analysis will be conducted using thematic analysis, which involves identifying patterns and themes in the data. Okay, the finding and discussion. A total of 20 students in ninth grade were randomly selected for the interview and filled the G form, and 2 English teachers for interview. The researcher did an interview with 1 English teacher and have asked and answered 5 questions in total. This is several questions that I give to them. First, what do you do before starting a lesson? Second, what strategies do you use to motivate students to learn? Third, what kind of assignment do you give? Fourth, do you think your students are motivated enough to learn? And the last is, do you think your strategies and teaching style are maximized to increase student motivation? Okay, you can see the answer from the teacher. So this is the answer. And continue to, this is the result from the questionnaire. So the first question is, apakah guru bahasa Inggris di sekolah Anda mampu memotivasi Anda untuk belajar bahasa Inggris? Lalu di grafik ini kalian bisa lihat hasil dari questionnaire tersebut dan bagaimana pendapat how a student opinion about motivation. Okay, 20 students have been filled the questionnaire and I got the different answer from all of them. This can be evidence that students have different opinion about study and motivation. Otherwise, the similar from them are how they are very need a good teacher in motivate study. They need teacher to maximize their motivation while studying English. Okay, based on the hypothetical situation of the role of teacher in enhancing student motivation to learn English in junior high school, it can be concluded that teachers play a significant role in promoting student motivation and engagement. Effective teaching strategies and techniques such as text-based language teaching (TBLT) and the use of technology and gamification in language learning can enhance student motivation and engagement. Okay, enough for me. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Oke, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Halimut Sadia. I'm from class 6B. My study number is 22232000014. I will presentation my paper in PowerPoint. This presentation fulfills the UAS requirements for the seminar on ELT course. The title is Teaching Reading at Junior High School. Next. Okay, the table of contents is the first is introduction, the second is literature review, the third is method, the first is finding and discussion, and the last in conclusion. Next. The first is abstract. Reading instruction in junior high school is vital for pupils to develop the abilities needed to comprehend and critically examine text. This article investigates many strategies and techniques that teachers might employ to improve children reading comprehension and foster a love of reading. The significance of providing a good and engaging reading environment, as well as the role of scaffolding, questioning, and summarizing in improving student reading ability is highlighted. Furthermore, the booklet covered the difficulties that teachers may have when teaching reading in junior high school and offers suggestions for resolving these difficulties. Teachers must also routine assess children reading level and provide differentiated education to match individual requirements. This may entail categories students depending on their reading ability. The next is introduction. The first is background. Reading is a crucial skill that English students must master. Reading raises kids' awareness of a variety of topics. Currently, the teacher managed by the 2013 national curriculum are broke between pedagogic and effective dimensions. Teacher must know the strategies and character education for students. In teaching English to junior high school requires a strategy for teaching. On the other hand, character education cannot be taught as a unit. The second is problem statement. Teachers are not ready for the change that are taking place in the world of education. As an example is currently when the change in curriculum occurred from the education unit level curriculum KTSP to the 213 curriculum, there was extraordinary confusion among teachers in carrying out learning method and models. The third is object of research, predicting the text using prior knowledge, learning infer meaning while reading a text, perceiving that the orderly and meaningful, comprehending and interpreting the written text. Next slide. The second is literature review. Definition of teaching. Teachers are individuals who deliver instruction typical in a primary, secondary, or university context. In terms of membership, teaching is the world's largest profession in the 21st century. There are predicted to be around 8 million educators globally. Despite the fact that their duty and tasks varies by country, disparities among teachers tend to be bigger inside a country than between countries. The next is definition of reading. One of the four language skills is listening, reading, writing, and speaking that a very human being must learn and master, connect with one's feelings and thoughts, gather information, and enhance one's scientific understanding. According to Tarigan, reading is a process that is optioned by the reader of the author's goals through written words. Next slide. The next is instructional reading principle. The first is reading is an active vocation, not a passive skill. The second is pupils must be interested in what they are doing. Pupils must be interested in the reading content. The third is children should be encouraged to respond to the content of a reading text. The fourth is book communicate to us, and photo, text, and title give us hints about what in the book before we even read a word. The five is match the assignment to the topic. One student have received a reading text. An appropriate exercise should be devised. And the last is a good instructor makes full use of the reading text. Any reading text has phrase, word, ideas, description, and so on. The next is concept teaching reading at junior high school. The first is reciprocal teaching, cognitive strategy instructional, close reading, and reading workshop. Next slide. And the next is method. The method is research approach. The type of research that will be used is qualitative research. The method is this research was conducted in real student classroom for children with low reading levels, and the participant were junior high school students in one room with poor reading skills because this research was conducted in their classroom. Next slide. The next is finding and discussion. The finding based on the data collected in this study, teacher who teach reading cannot handle students who cannot read. Whether or not student can read is closely related to student learning abilities and motivation. Behaviors that originate from the teacher is caused by various reasons are previously listed, including internal teacher factor and external teacher factors. The next is discussion. Teaching reading at junior high school level is a critical aspect of education as it lies the foundation for student literacy skill and their overall academic success. It is important to have effective strategies and approach in place to ensure the student develop strong reading abilities and a love of reading. Here are some key points to consider in the discussion about teaching reading at junior high school. The first is developmentally appropriate materials, balanced literacy approach, reading strategies, and vocabulary instruction. Next. The last is conclusion. From the study, researchers conclude that the teacher bring goodness in it influence on student learning to read class practice. Teacher believe in teaching reading discussed in this study related to several aspects such as learning objective, the role of the teacher, the principle of teaching reading, and the concept of teaching reading to students. Next slide. And the last is suggestion. Teacher suggestion because interactive technique can improve student understanding. High school English teacher can utilize it to teach English reading comprehension. Suggestion for additional research student, motivation to study English reading comprehension can also be increased via interactive techniques. When students see a teacher reading fluently and enthusiastically, they are more likely to choose the same book or another book by the same author for leisure reading. Okay, enough for me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, so Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ivan Cipta Fitri. My student number is 222 32 0 and 47. I'm going to present the article of my mini research of phenomenological study of language mixing and code switching in digital space. Next. Next, please. First, I want to explain the background of my mini research study. So, since communication is part of human society, human that communicate through different languages and diversities can arouse a lot of differences. To overcome this issue, society agreed to use a common language, which later will be referred as global language. Despite this, people who speak more than one language will have tendency to mix different sentences or words from different languages or switch the language used when communicating. This phenomenon occurs for multiple of reasons, but some studies found that language switching and mixing might have an impact on how social interaction and the relationship between speakers. There is a statement that says the occurrence of code switching will reveal in various turns of the conversation, and the occurrence of code switching plays a crucial role in identifying the position of the speaker. So when teaching foreign language like English subject in Indonesia, this phenomenon of language mixing and code switching is very apparent. Next. The formulation of the problem of this research is the language mixing and code switching is a common occurrence for people who speak for more than one language. It is especially more noticeable during foreign language learning classroom, where teachers juggle between the taught language and the native language when teaching. It might be less noticeable when it was held face-to-face, but since the recent worldwide events of COVID-19, classroom is held through online means. This increased the noticeability of the phenomenon of language mixing and code switching, as there is less extra factor that contribute during the interaction, namely gestures. Within digital space, there's less factor that how influence how social interaction will turn out. As such, there's a need to gauge how much the language mixing and code switching will affect social interaction with the most minimum extra factors possible. As in digital space, you don't need to meet the person face to face. You can't really understand the expressions of the other speaker. You cannot see fully the gestures, and sometimes it is also hard to read the intention and the tones of the speaker. So these are the questions that I seek to aim. The first one is, how does the gender influence perception towards language mixing and code switching in interaction? Does age influence someone's perception towards language mixing and code switching in an interaction? Does language mixing and switching affect interaction in negative or positive way? The frequency of language mixing and code switching, how much the occurrence influence in interaction? And does the relationship of the participants during interaction influence perception towards language mixing and code switching? And lastly, does the exposure and popularity of the used phrases or words influence perception towards language mixing and code switching? Next, please. The next is the literature review. So code switching and language mixing are very common phenomena in second language learning environments between teachers and students. For teachers, this communication strategy is used in areas such as providing new learning experiences, change of topic, translation, evaluation, and learning comprehension, explanation of complex grammatical content, instruction, repetition, and emphasis of important tests, and many other things. Baker in 2007 points out that code switching and mixing can be used to emphasize particular points and to replace unfamiliar words in your target language with words that reinforce your request to clarify your points. It also reduces tensions and brings humor to conversation for social identity and camaraderie. Extensive research have been carried out over the years by scholars on the area of code switching and mixing from different perspectives ranging from psycholinguistics to sociolinguistics. Next, please. So the methodology research that I used to gather this many research, this research basically used a phenomenological study to conduct the study. And the samples that were taken were 20 random samples that were given out of 10 of male and 10 of female that were given out questionnaires and a survey with the questions revolving around language mixing and code switching. The question covers topics such as how common it is for them to mix and switch language, how common their friends mix and switch language, and who does it more often, whether it is the monolinguals, bilinguals, or multilinguals. There are two parts of the questionnaire. With the first part is about themselves, and the second part is the questions about their friends. And at the end of both parts, there are open-ended questions about whether they notice any changes from the speaking partner when they mix and switch language. For the data analysis, I utilize qualitative analysis to find common ideas regarding the language mixing and code switching phenomenon. And I use phenomenological research study to conduct the data analysis. It is also to determine whether its influence is significant or not during an interaction. So English EFL teacher can understand whether applying this phenomenon during class is better or not. Next, please. So the finding and the discussion out of the question that were presented during the questionnaire and survey, gender and age seems to play a little role in switching and mixing and the relation with social interaction, as all of them gave equal answer. For example, 4 people who answered negatively towards language switching and code switching consisted of 2 males and 2 females. So it means that there are no dominant gender that have tendency to lean towards negative or positive opinion, as both gender are equally have same value towards language mixing and code switching. It also means that when it is not possible to observe the person in real time and faced with many limitations to communicate, there is lesser need for gender and age to influence how the interaction will happen. It's also the same with age, because the age range from that are provided of 4 from teenagers, young adults, middle adults, and late and late adult. There are no particularly dominant age range that affect which age group has dominant tendency towards negative or positive view towards language mixing and code switching. So both gender and age seems to be irrelevant. And also most of the language switching were done by multilingual from respondent, both themselves or their friends. So it seems that monolinguals have little language mixing on code switching. Mixing and switching also rarely happen on average, but have considerable impact on how others would react. Mostly it was done by using phrases or sentences that are exclusive to those who understood it, rather than use it as a form of regular interaction. This means that although it can incite exclusivity, most of the time it also might invite others to join in through curiosity and strengthen their bonds by learning together and turning exclusivity into inclusivity. Next, please. So lastly, the conclusion. In conclusion, language mixing and switching have more noticeable impact on social interactions when it has limited factors. Less factors such as tones that could indicate the other speaker's emotion and expressions are not present. This means that linguistic structure will become more noticeable and highlighted in order to grasp the meaning of what the other speaker tries to convey. As such, language mixing and switching will also be more noticeable and may become the focus of the topic. Meanwhile, when you talk face to face, you might not realize there were language mixing as your focus will be dispersed to other factors and talking face to face require faster thinking. This is also probably why language switching and mixing are not that common, as they understood that it will be noticeable and become conscious about how it will affect the way the conversation will unfold as they realize the effect of language switching and mixing. Speakers become more careful in using language switching and mixing, and mostly only do it to those who speak in the same language to play safe. Next. And at the end of this presentation, I would like to give suggestion about language mixing and code switching for English language teaching. So based on the conclusion, it is safe to assume that language mixing and code switching in English language teaching should be paid more attention to. The teacher should be mindful in switching or mixing language. They cannot speak one language only in order to initiate engagement, as teacher who only speak native language will not be able to realize the linguistic depth of English, and teacher who only use English would confuse students even more, as many terms need to be explained and translated. Teacher cannot use complicated or advanced vocabulary too often, as it will throw off the students, especially for learners who learn English as second or foreign language. This would severely impact the effectiveness of relaying the important materials across the students. And lastly, do not mix or switch language too often. It is absolutely inappropriate to switch or mix language in every phrase or words. Not only those does not sound appealing, it will also confuse the students as they have to translate it with too much frequency, leading them to be unable to keep up with what was said. That is all from my presentation. Thank you for listening. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.